Welcome to the third class of Even More Stories from the Secret City. This is October the 4th, and it's final of our 3 sessions for the fall. By the way, I just got notification for the next series that will be coming up in, I guess, the winter series. And I've agreed to do even more stories from the Secret City again. So if you're one of my regulars, I look forward to having you back in the coming winter season. So without other thoughts this morning, let's remind us of our approach. We really do want you to ask questions, and I'll stop sharing the screen periodically to do that. We'll keep you muted. And again, you realize how to use the views to see what you want, and I'll watch the chat if you want to enter some questions that way, or to me privately. Of course, an alternate is just unmute yourself and ask away. I'll let you interrupt and be happy to have the interruption. As you know, we've had guests this time. We've had Katie Watt join us. And then at the first session, the second session, we had Mike Stallo, and today we have Alan Lowe with us as a guest from the American Museum of Science and Energy. Alan, I want to steal just a little bit of your thunder and talk just a bit about the book club that you have. And I do this, there you can see what books are coming up. But I do it because I want to talk about Richard Feynman. And we were looking at his book last month, and that's already passed us. But Richard is one of my favorite scientists. He was a prankster. He loved to pull jokes. He was also able to pick locks. So he worked at Los Alamos, and he would periodically just go around and open the safes that they kept their top secret information in. And the people who were trying to keep the safes locked would be frustrated by the fact that they knew they locked it, but when they came back, it would be open. He also found a hole in the fence in Los Alamos and went through that hole and walk by the guard, and then go back through the hole and walk by the guard again until the guard became frustrated because he recognized he was looking at the same man all the time. His connection to Oak Ridge is even more serious, though. He realized that the Tennessee Eastman Company, who ran Y12, didn't really understand what they were doing. They didn't understand that if you stored too much of this highly enriched uranium close to it, to another container of it, you run the risk of creating a criticality. And they also didn't understand that a concrete block wall would not stop the neutrons. So they were storing material on one side of a wall and then putting it right up against the wall on the other side. And he came to Oak Ridge and told them, explained to them that you can't store this stuff that close together. So he may have, in all likelihood, prevented a criticality accident at Y12 by helping Tennessee Eastman know how to store their product that they were producing. And then finally, I don't know that Alan's going to talk to you about this, but I want you to know that he was on Channel 10, who came out for highlighting Oak Ridge just within the past week or so. And they did a really good job, I think, of doing that for us. And that's available on their website if you'd like to go and check it out. So with that introduction, Alan Lowe is the executive director of the American Museum of Science and Energy.
Good morning, everyone. Great to join you. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. Ray Smith is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's an important member of our board. He's taught me so much about Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge story. Always appreciate you, Ray, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this. I'm going to find my PowerPoint here. I'm still learning technology. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have it just fine. Thank you.
Very good. So again, thank you. I understand some of you have heard me speak before about AMSI and the K-25 History Center, and some have not. So what I thought I'd do this morning is just do a brief intro for those who have not heard about what we're up to at the museums, and then about halfway through, I'll segue over to an update on some exciting new things we're either doing right now or we're planning for the future. As I've since May now, we've been reopened, thank goodness. Being closed to the public during COVID taught us a lot of lessons about how to teach and reach folks online, something that AMSI frankly had not done that much before. And now I think we're one of the leaders in doing that, but still we wanted to open the museums. So both are indeed open. We do have a mask restriction right now. So regardless of vaccination status, we ask that everyone wear a mask when visiting. Hopefully, I pray that the pandemic will go away soon and those rates will go down and we can do away with that restriction. But for now, we do require masks, but we're happy to be reopened. I hope you all have been to AMSI and to the K-25 History Center. At AMSI, if you have been, you know, we start with the Manhattan Project. It's the basis of everything in Oak Ridge. But then we move on from there to talk about what's happened at Oak Ridge National Lab, at the Y-12 National Security Complex, throughout this amazing region of East Tennessee since World War II, and what's happening here today. So many things to talk about. Big science, we talk about neutron science and nanotechnology, supercomputing, biology, energy, of course. The topics go on because when you look at the portfolio of the federal entities here, Oak Ridge National Lab and Y-12 in particular, it's an amazing portfolio. It seems like every advance going on in the country is starting right here in East Tennessee. And we want to tell that story, but also then use that story to teach broader lessons of STEM, of science and technology, of engineering and mathematics, with a healthy dose of the arts and history thrown in there as well. So that's a really exciting current story that we're telling based on that very important historical foundation. Now, at the K-25 History Center, that's a new entity. You know, AMSI's been around since 1949. The K-25 History Center only opened in 2020, about 3 weeks before we closed it due to the pandemic. So we weren't open long, we're reopened now. It tells the story, of course, of the K-25 gaseous diffusion plant, but it starts with a broader story of the creation of Oak Ridge and the Manhattan Project across America and at the sites in Canada as well. And then it moves on specifically to the plant, the science behind gaseous diffusion, and importantly, the people behind the work done there, not just the Manhattan Project, but in the years after that. It's an amazing museum, chock full of artifacts. If you haven't been out to the K-25 History Center yet, make sure you go out there. It's extraordinarily well done, if I do say so. I sound like I'm not being humble. I had nothing to do. They were completely at museum when I got here, so I'm very proud to direct it, and it's extraordinarily well done. So I will also note that as good as our exhibits are, at AMSI, we used the shutdown time once we were allowed back in the building to do some renovations. So there in the lower left of this slide, you see Quinn, our curator, working on our new virtual reality gallery. So those are the types of things we've added. We've added a new case on the nuclear navy at AMSI. We started adding QR codes on the exhibit, which allow you through your smartphone to access videos about certain parts of the exhibit. We have some pretty complicated topics like neutron science. So we've gone to some of our partners at Oak Ridge National Lab and other places. So will you make these videos for us to help explain these topics even better to our guests? So those are being added as we speak throughout both exhibits at AMSI, and they'll be at K-25 as well. And we've added other things. If you go in our classrooms now, one of our classrooms at AMSI, we have some kind of hands-on activities for people of all ages. So you can go in there and learn more about electrical circuits or computer coding, or you can use a microscope, those types of things. And that type of activity will only grow. So we tried to make the exhibits even better at AMSI, and we're planning the next special exhibit at K-25 We also, as I hope you know, AMSI has always been an engine of education in the community. And we've been in classrooms, and tons of kids come and visit both museums. Of course, that came to a standstill thanks to the pandemic. It has restarted to some degree, getting folks into our classrooms at AMSI and out to the K-25 History Center. We have started our outreach again into classrooms, but now there's a healthy dose of online education. So we do virtual classes with our educators at AMSI, speaking into classrooms at schools. We also are creating videos and other resources that we're putting online. For the K through 12 education, we're calling that AMSI Explore, and starting kind of to brand that in that way to talk about these different types of programs we're doing with kids of those ages. We're also talking about AMSI University, which we'll talk about in a minute, for adults and university students as well. So, AMSI prides itself on being a STEM innovator. We have 3 educators plus a couple of other folks who help us in outreach and on a contract basis to reach kids of all ages. And we're talking now, what's next? What other topics do we need to explore? Things like robotics, and where there are good partnerships with other groups in town, other museums, other groups like ORICL, where we can say, what are you doing and how can we be helpful in those educational efforts? And we'll talk more about later, how do we make that a national undertaking so that we are seen across the nation as an educational resource. Programming has always been important at AMSI as well. Of course, again, the pandemic taught us we had to do new things. Ray knows, some of you have heard me before know that my baby is the podcast called AMSI Cast. You see in the upper left-hand part of the slide there. We now, I think, have either 17 or 18 episodes posted, almost the exact same number in production. I'm scheduling interviews through next March now already with a range of scientists and science writers, engineers, people from all over the world talking to us. You can find that on any major podcast channel. And there's also a website, I think it's amsicast.lib.syn. I can send that to Ray, and he can send it to the group. The websites are always hard to remember, but look up on any podcast channel, AMSIcast, and you'll find everyone from Richard Rhodes, Thomas Zachariah. I interviewed Andy Weir, who wrote the book The Martian and Project Hail Mary, great science fiction writer. I've interviewed an android, believe it or not, that soon will be posted on there. So those interviews are giving us a great national reach, and they're really fascinating, about an hour long, usually 45 minutes to an hour. So please do check out AMSIcast. Ray mentioned earlier their online book club. If you just go to the AMSI Facebook page now, you can see those posts. You can sign up if you wish to the book club. We have a book a month. This month it is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Every 4th month, the National Park Service joins in to do something, a book related to the Manhattan Project. So they're a great partner in this. We've teamed up with Oak Ridge Public Library, the Clinton Public Library, and UTK libraries as well to get a good reach for that book club. So that's been a lot of fun. And if any of you are walkers or runners, we have our Race to Space, a virtual race to space. So you sign up online at the amsi.org. And then when you sign up, you get a Race to Space t-shirt we'll send to you. And when you reach certain levels, when you say walk a few miles and you reach a certain level virtually of the atmosphere, we will send you a 3D printed medal for each layer of the atmosphere that you reach on your way racing up to the space station, which is 224 miles above us. I will never reach it, but a few have already, and we've sent them their medals along the way. So it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun to do, and a great way for us to reach out to the public. I should note on there you see the DOE bus tour that has been postponed due to COVID this fall. We very much hope to start those again next spring. That's in the hands of our partners at DOE. Of course, that will depend entirely upon the infection rates as we approach that. I will note that when we had started these in the spring of 2020, before we had to close due to COVID, the route had changed a bit. We started AMSI, and we go to Y12 Visitor Center, the K25 History Center, and the Graphite Reactor, passing other things along the way, but those are now the main stops when that will restart. Hope and pray next spring. Volunteers. We always need volunteers, and I make sure every time I speak to a group to let everyone know that volunteers are always important and needed at AMSI and at K25. Obviously, they serve as greeters and folks who tell folks about the exhibit, but we're looking into other roles as well, and especially in education, working with kids who come through, helping out with programs, those types of things. If you or anyone you know are interested, please let me know. Glenda Bingham has been overseeing that program for many years. She is amazing. We love our volunteers, and certainly would love for you to be part of that team. All right. Now with that, I wanted to now switch over to the new things happening, what the future holds for both AMSI and the K25 History Center. I think the future is extraordinarily bright. I will say, starting first on kind of a macro level of new things, and I've mentioned this, I think maybe in the last one, but this is so important. I will say it again. The AMSI Foundation, chaired by Jim Campbell, who's head of ETech, took over operations of AMSI and the K25 History Center this past March. Now, it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of discussions through the years, and Ray knows this much better than I do, about how AMSI is managed. It's been typically managed as a contractor, essentially, to the Department of Energy. And we've always appreciated the great support given to us by the department, but being in that kind of mode, contractor mode, necessarily set limits on us in terms of things like fundraising and approval of programming, those types of things that didn't really let us spread our wings. And there have been different ways of thinking about altering that over the years that never quite came to fruition. Thanks to a really great board of directors and a really great relationship with the Department of Energy, we were able to, this past March, come up with what's called a cooperative agreement that says the AMSI Foundation, the nonprofit AMSI Foundation, now operates both museums with continued wonderful support from the Department of Energy, but with the hope over time that we become more and more self-sufficient, but still getting great support as we speak from DOE. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for us, frankly. It's given us great flexibility in being able to kind of plot our path to the future and things like programming, marketing, looking at fundraising, all those things. There you see our executive committee, our vision and mission for the foundation. And we've grown the board since I've gotten here, I think from 9 to 17 members now. So it's a really terrific board of directors doing some great work. And I'm really proud that we were able to get that change done. What also, though, that says to us is that we now need to think about how to be more entrepreneurial, how we look at AMSI going down the road, how we perform our mission, how we hit that vision, but also do things like bringing more people in the door, frankly, of improving our sales operations at our gift shops, at looking at new programs and new products, thinking about fundraising, which we'll talk more about in a minute, and improving our fundraising and membership capabilities so that we can ensure that we're not only doing well now, but then in 20 years, AMSI and K25 are healthy, that we have a solid financial base, that perhaps by then we started growing an endowment, and that we have our facilities where they need to be in terms of operating correctly, that we have all the programs in place, that we have a good financial base going forward. We have to be entrepreneurial. I'm really proud of our crew as they've thought about how to do that in a good way, in a way that still allows us to not lose sight of our educational mission, but also to make sure that we're finding ways to help us be financially stable, for sure. Now, in education, I will say a big macro focus is making us a national and international resource while still focusing on our community, which my staff makes fun of me by saying I have multiple number one priorities. And it's true. I do always have a lot of number one priorities, but we want to make sure, particularly now that we're able to utilize the online environment, that we are making national and international partnerships and making our resources available throughout the world. So that's starting, especially with our National Advisory Committee, we're starting to put together. Ray's been very helpful in doing that, of making those connections with individuals and with organizations around the country. And we'll talk more about it in a moment about a specific class we're putting together that I think will be a good starting point for that. So how do we get that reach in education, but also how do we market the museum so that people want to make it part of their visit to Tennessee, to East Tennessee, that for sure they're coming to Oak Ridge, they're seeing AMSI, seeing K-25, seeing all the other great things to see in Oak Ridge and in Knoxville. New traditions. So, you know, we're seeing what are we going to do in the future, and some of the future is now. I would say these are new things happening or getting ready to happen. In the left side, you see something that's been happening for a long time: the Van de Graaff generator, and people's hair standing up. That's almost the symbol of AMSI. I found so many of these photos going back so many years. We're going to put together a great photo exhibit in the auditorium next to the Van de Graaff, showing people through the years getting their hair stand. But it does me no good, ladies and gentlemen, as you may be able to see, but a lot of people, it's a great, fun, and memorable experience at AMSI. We also are now thinking about how we make that into a great photo opportunity for people down the road. So we're looking into photo booths and that type of thing as well in the auditorium. On the right side there, you see our first exhibit in the Innovators Gallery that just opened. This is an exhibit featuring the technology of a company called RDI. It's motion detection technology. There you see a person hitting on the drum set we have, and you can kind of see the motion. RDI uses that technology in different companies to look at things like the vibration of machinery and that type of thing. What it really shows, this exhibit, is that even when we think we're sitting still, we're not. And it's a really fascinating discussion of the forces of motion. So that's going to be a revolving exhibit. RDI is just the first one of being there through next March. But it's just a way for us to showcase technology in action, technology in this region, showing what an innovative region this is, and teaching and hopefully inspiring that next generation about technology. In the middle there, kind of in the middle, very middle of the slide, you see Eureka. It's a kinetic sculpture recently donated to us by the East Tennessee Children's Hospital. It is amazing to see in action. This does not do it justice. Every piece of that seems to move, and it's helping us, and we're incorporating that now into our educational mission to talk about forces of motion and so forth. And it's just fun to watch too. It's a great new dynamic element to the exhibit. In the lower left, you see what was the Secret Growth exhibit at AMSI before COVID hit. It was about the African American experience during the Manhattan Project, but also afterwards in Oak Ridge. Sadly, that wasn't up long before we had to close and dismantle it. Now our curator, Quinn, is putting it together as hopefully the next special exhibit that will be at K-25. So that is in the works as we speak. And speaking of K-25, as Ray knows, there are discussions about what happens next on that property in terms of the actual place of where the plant was and how to view that. And we are engaged with DOE as they think about kind of the next elements on that site to pay tribute to the legacy of Manhattan Project and the K-25 plant. Also on a micro level as well, we are looking at the training of our crew. We're doing customer service training, retail training, professional development. I find it's in every museum I've ever overseen, it's very easy to lose sight of those important elements of helping your crew be having great morale and learning more about their craft. Even I've been in this a long time, but I have to do the same thing. It's easy to get that, lose sight of that in the day-to-day operations, where you're just important getting the doors open and doing what we need to do, but we need to help our staff, help our crew grow and learn more about what they're doing to be even better at what they do. So we've really put a big focus on that, taking part in professional conferences, looking at training, particularly online training that can help us do our jobs even better. I'm taking part this week in an online conference that's being held in Washington, and I'll be doing it right here from my home. But it's a great way for us to learn more and to network and to be part of that broader community. So we do have a national and an international reach as well. I will also say I'm very excited about a new program we have called AMSI Quiz. That just started. We had our first AMSI Quiz at Crafters Brew in Oak Ridge. I made up 600 questions, ladies and gentlemen, easy and hard questions, science and all STEM related, Little Manhattan Project and their history as well. And folks will come up, and the way it's working now is I will ask you 2 easy questions. If you get both of those, then you get 2 hard questions. And if you get both of those, you get a final really hard question. And each of those levels, you get a little prize, a pencil, coffee mug. If they get the really hard question, we're giving them an individual membership typically to AMSI for the year. I don't make those very hard questions easy in any way. So I think one person at Crafters Brew got all 5, but a few others got 4 of them. So it was so much fun. I will say people enjoyed it even more as the beer flowed, but it was a great way for us to reach the community, to teach a little STEM, and to have a lot of fun with folks. So we're now setting up the next venues. And we're also, speaking of being entrepreneurial, talking about making AMSI Quiz into a card game that we can sell at those venues and in our gift shops. So that's a lot of fun. So make sure you keep an eye on AMSI.org when we talk about the next venue for AMSI Quiz. We'll be all over Oak Ridge and Knoxville in the future. I will say, just in terms of our education, we're doing more and more outreach, virtual outreach. And here's just an example of, I don't know if you all know Chris Light. Chris does a lot of the outreach programming for us. And so she's still going into classrooms, but also doing it virtually as well. So we have to kind of figure out the right mix of in-person and hybrid. To some degree, the pandemic will determine that right now. But once the pandemic is gone, we will still have a big virtual presence. And the question we have to answer, I have to help answer as the director, is what is the right split of that. We never don't want kids. We always want kids coming into the museum. We always want to be out in classrooms, but this virtual component is huge, and it really allows us to reach so many more people. The question is, how do you divide that correctly in terms of your priorities? I'm excited about AMSI University. This is for college age students and beyond, kind of higher level online resources that we want to create. We've started creating one about neutron science, and we've interviewed some wonderful people at the Spallation Neutron Source throughout the lab about this. Still being put together now, but I see this as kind of an online webinar that you'll be able to access. I want to do one, Ray, on the Manhattan Project as well. We have a few other topics that we know we want to put on the AMSI website that people will be able to access about really cool, interesting topics that a bit above the K through 12 level of some really fascinating things explained well by people who know a lot more about it than I do. I should also note we're doing other new things in education. Renee Kelly, who just joined our team, is putting together a school trunk program. That's kind of old style, frankly, but it's really, really successful, putting together these trunks that schools check out on different scientific topics, and they're able to give them in-class resources to use. The first one we're doing is on the census that she's putting together, always tied to standards. That's what I always stress with our educators, always tied to standards in the state or throughout the nation. Memberships, we've rationalized, I would say, first of all. If you looked at AMSI memberships in the past, there was a huge number of titles to them. We've reduced those now to the ones you see on the screen. We've also started corporate membership levels, corporations to be able to sign up for members of their team. So that's an important new change we've done, but also the big new change in membership is the premier of the 117 Society, and that's named in honor of Oak Ridge's role in the creation of Element 117, Tennessee. Very excited about that. We wanted to pay tribute to it. This society officially kicked off last month with some online programming. We're going to have an in-person program, we hope, next spring at AMSI to introduce people to the society as well. It's kind of the upper level membership. So if you join this, you get access to exclusive access to all kinds of online resources we're creating. For example, something called AMSI Trip, where I'm going out to different places around the region and talking to them behind the scenes about the technology they're using, about what they're doing. I'm hoping to go to places like the equine research place up at UK or the Sweetwater Valley farm to look at the robots who help with the milking of the cattle, all those kind of things, kind of behind the scenes stuff that only 117 Society members will get. We're also doing something called One Amazing Moment with a lot of our AMSI cast guests, where we talk to them about the eureka moments, either in their lives or that have inspired them. So really fun stuff. And also, if you're a 117 Society member, you get to say to us at AMSI, you get to direct us to teach a new class we're creating to a school of your choice here or around the country. And the class is based on the periodic table. There'll be one for both elementary level and for high school students. We're putting that together now. It will be available, start being available to schools in the fall of 2022. But again, if you sign up, you're able to say, I'm a 117 Society member, and I want you to offer that class free of charge to this school. And we will do that. To buy membership in this, it's $1,000 a year for 3 years, and then $500 a year thereafter to stay in it. There will also be programs that we put on for 117 Society members, merchandise, recognition at AMSI. We're putting up a great new exhibit now about 117. We will recognize 117 Society members. Again, this is an important part of putting together that community team and eventually that national team that will make sure AMSI and the K-25 History Center are around and doing well in the next 20 and 50 years. Here's our online addresses for you. Please do check out AMSI.org and K25historycenter.org. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about today is on there, as well as on our Facebook page. So if you want to sign up for the book club, go to Facebook. If you want to see the book club post, if you want to sign up for the race, you can go to AMSI.org, and there's a sign up sheet there for the virtual race. We post all the time on Facebook, and we're trying to do even better with that. Getting ready to start a monthly newsletter as well. So if you sign up, we'll send you out kind of quick updates from AMSI notes at least once a month to tell you what's going on at both museums. So with that, I think I've said everything I was going to say. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to tell you more about our museums. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Alan. If you'll go ahead and unshare your screen so we can get everybody back on here, we'll.
There you go. All right.
Entertain any questions that you have for Alan. Just unmute yourself and ask away.
Alan, I just wanted to say, my name is Ann Rigel, and I heard you at the Lions Club also, and I am so impressed with the things that you are bringing to Oak Ridge and the future of AMSI. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Well, thank you so much. That does my heart good. I appreciate it. And I love what I do, and I love these museums. I love this community. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm glad you do.
Bob, did you have a question?
Just a comment, hearing him talking about the 117th Society. Did you ever consider making membership $117 a month?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me talk to my guys about that. That's really good. I wasn't imagining enough to think about that, Bob. I like that.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Alan, we appreciate you being with us this morning, and you're obviously welcome to stay, but you probably have more things to do with your morning. So we appreciate you dropping in again, and we'll talk to you about possibly participating in the winter session as well. Okay.
I'm always here. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you. Any question for me before I go back to sharing the screen and share some other things with you? Any question that you have? Obviously, I encourage questions and would love to go down any rabbit trail that you would like me to. I'm going to start by answering the two things that came up at the last session. So unless you've got something else on your mind right now, we'll go ahead and pick that up. Okay. All right, let's see if I can get this back up now. And we'll go there. The first thing is the Main Street loss. There was a question about the energy efficiency, if that had any of that designed into it. When I looked into that, I could not find anything unique or special from an energy saving standpoint. I may have overlooked it, but these are some of the things that they are proud of, and talk about the location and the things that are there at the Main Street loss, and talks about the ceilings and appliance packages, kitchens, baths in some of the units, but I didn't find anything about any energy savings. Okay. Now, we also asked about uranium-233 and its disposition, or if we were taking advantage of the element or the isotope and what was available there. Isotech made this presentation, and I want to share it with you. It talks about where it's located. It's located at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in these buildings: 2040, 2026, 3017, 3019, and 3137. Those are the buildings that are involved in the operations of Isotech and what they're doing with the U-233. The inventory disposition plan, there's some direct disposition of it, and then there's some things that they've already done that they've completed. And the high purity material is 90%. The other two they've already completed. And they started on the oxide powders in October, and that's ongoing now, along with these other activities you see listed. This shows some of the current operations in the oxide processing, where they open the canisters and work on it in a glove box. I'm sorry, someone's coming on here. And they dissolve it in nitric acid to make that uranyl nitrate. And then the thorium is rinsed off to get to collect the thorium. And they solidify the thorium particles. So thorium is being pulled out of the in the process. It started in October of 2019, was suspended during 2020 because of COVID from March to September. And then they talk about some of the efficiencies, equipment challenges, how much they processed, and how much of the waste has been disposed over 5 shipments. So, and the amount of thorium that's been taken out to date. Also preparing hot cells in 2026 for processing the more highly radioactive 233 canisters. And these are the process steps and the facilities that they're using for that. Again, some of the locations where they're actually doing the work and working it in the hot cells because of the radioactivity. Again, more pictures of their operations, how they're actually managing it, processing it, and disposing of it. These are the companies that they have involved in the work, located in many of them in Knoxville and the Oak Ridge area, and more that have been involved in the work. So that U-233 is a very active processing campaign that is ongoing, and one that that is not only pulling out some of the material that can be used, but also processing to dispose of the rest of it in a manner that we'll know where it is and go get it in the future if needed. So that gives you an update on U-233. Unless there's any questions on that, I'm going to move to another area. All right. This I want you to see is a tour that I took a lady and her husband on last week. This lady is the niece of Major General Nichols. He was Colonel Nichols at the time. And she wanted to see where he lived when he was here in Oak Ridge. So I took her up on Olney Lane and showed her the house that Colonel Nichols lived in. She is doing research on him and is documenting some of the information that has not been published about then Colonel Nichols. And I'm glad to be able to give her a tour of Oak Ridge and to help her put some places together with information that she had done research about. Alan mentioned an exhibit that's at AMSI that's going to be relocated to K25. And I want to mention one that's now at the Oak Ridge History Museum about the Oak Ridge 85 and the integration of the Oak Ridge schools in 1955. I realize you can't see enough of this to read any of it and understand it, but it is the Secret Growth exhibit, and it's a well done exhibit about that about that integration. And I would encourage you to go by the Oak Ridge History Museum and see this. It's up now in the main Wildcat Den, and I believe it's going to be up for a month or so. I'm not sure the full length of the time, but I would encourage you to go by there. They're open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday and Friday from 10 to 2, and Saturday from 10 to 3. So I would encourage you to go by and take advantage of this well-done exhibit about the integration in 1955 of the Oak Ridge High School and Robertsville Junior High. I mentioned about Alan getting interviewed at the Channel 10's highlighting of Oak Ridge, and Andy took an exhibit up there of liquid nitrogen, and they had fun with that. They did a good job of promoting our city on Channel 10, and you can see that it's available on their website. And if you want to go check it out, I think you'll enjoy it. All right, now let's pause for a minute and see if you've got any questions about anything that you'd like me to address before I show you a little short video that I hope will be better than the one I tried to show at the first session. It has some of the same information, but it's from a little different twist about what's going on in Oak Ridge. Any questions before I try to show the video? All right, let's give it a whirl and see if we can get it to run. All right, I bring it up and I'm going to share the sound and I'm going to optimize the video clip. And we're going to this and to the next one. And let's see if it'll run. And you can
A report released by the East Tennessee Economic Council in August shows the Department of Energy's operations in Oak Ridge have a massive impact on the state's economy. Ongoing research, national defense, and environmental cleanup missions generate an annual economic impact of $7.2 billion to the state of Tennessee and directly employ more than 14,000 workers. DOE ranks among the top 5 employers in the state. Approximately 2,500 of those employees focus exclusively on environmental cleanup projects that are protecting these annual investments and creating new economic opportunities for the community.
Our role here, not only are we freeing up one site, which is East Tennessee Technology Park, which is the first gaseous diffusion plant in the world that was cleaned up and took it from a contaminated site with old dilapidated buildings to now it's a site where there's active reindustrialization or new businesses coming in out there to replace the old DOE operations. But in addition to that, both NNSA at Y-12 and science, the science program at Oak Ridge National Laboratory have modernization programs and new facilities being built today. Both those programs have about $1 billion of new construction going on over the next several years there. And the EM program is integrated with that. So as soon as we make clean land available, they've got missions coming in right behind us.
Nowhere is EM's impact more evident than at the East Tennessee Technology Park. The site is a featured case study in the most recent economic report. EM completed cleanup on a historic scale at ETPP in 2020. That effort transformed the former enrichment complex into an industrial park that is attracting businesses and large private investments. EM has transferred approximately 1,300 acres at the site for industrial development, with more slated in the future.
Recently, since Vision 2020 has been completed, there's been a real uptick in true businesses locating to the area. We've had a medical isotope facility that's already got 200 acres at Duck Island. Nuclear energy company, it's taken 185 acres at K31 and K33. And 2 more projects. One is a biofuels company, the other is a nuclear fuels company, and they'll be locating up very near where we're standing right now.
In August, EM crews at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory took a major step forward in preparing the former bulk shielding reactor for demolition by removing remaining highly radioactive components from the reactor pool. After crews removed and shipped the material, workers drained 130,000 gallons of water and transported it for treatment.
And we will go in and then continue our deactivation activities in order to prepare the building for eventual demolition to clear footprint at the Oak Ridge National Lab.
Crews also made progress at Y-12, transitioning the Alpha 2 building to a safe and stable condition that will allow future teams to prepare it for demolition. The large Manhattan Project-era building stands 3 stories tall and covers nearly 2.5 acres. The facility originally housed equipment for uranium enrichment from 1944 to 1946. Those were deactivated in the early 1950s. However, the building was used for a variety of missions until its final shutdown in the 1990s. Crews continued to deactivate Alpha 2, which includes removing waste and asbestos throughout the facility. Stay tuned to see the progress we make next month.
And go to this one. So I hope you were able to hear and see that video, and I hope that gives you an idea of what's going on in the 3 sites, not just K25. But this shows you the buildings that have been removed from the K25 site, East Tennessee Technology Park. The small modular reactor, the new demonstration reactor, is going here in K31, 33 buildings. This shows you the biology building at Y12 that has been demolished. That's some of the demolition work that was going on. This is what the site looks like now. If you look in the background and know what you're looking for, you can see that that's Alpha 3 and Alpha 2 is there and then alpha 1. So alpha 2 is right in the middle of that fog that you can't see very well, but it's the one that they talked about bringing down. And now I want to talk about another process that's going on that has to do with the future of electricity production. And it talks about the energy demand in the coming and how that's going to be met. And notice the sharp incline that we're talking about here. And the investment in energy, they are predicting is huge, all right? And they're talking about how much that's going to be impacting us. And again, now look, they're looking way into the future, 2050, 2100. So keep that in mind when you think about what we're talking about here, and just think about this idea of fusion energy, because that's what we're talking about, and the investment in fusion energy. And they talk a little about some of the opportunities that are coming, and again, talk about the basics of fusion versus fission, and how much more energy is available through the fusion process than fission. A lot of energy from a small amount of fuel. And the way that they look at it, the fuel required, coal, and the waste produced versus fusion, and the waste produced there, and comparing it with renewables. Obviously, this is promoting the idea of fusion and how that we can use the lithium reserves to produce this fusion. Can meet global energy needs for over 16,000 years at the current rate of consumption. And again, this is hard to imagine, but this is the future that this particular presentation wanted us to appreciate and understand, how that we can transition from fusion to fusion as a practical power source. And this is a quote from Stephen Hawking, who was able to recognize that and promote the idea. And now they're talking about the major 20-year push that they see going. Of course, the ITER project in France is progressing rapidly. They've got tools for optimizing the performance, new technology to address some of the key challenges of semiconductors, material design, advanced manufacturing, and new dollars are needed, obviously, to make the push possible. So they talk about thinking that it's time now for bringing fusion into the U.S. grid. And note the date, 2021, a pilot plant, but not realize we're talking about 2035 to 2040 before you'll see that. So it's not going to happen right around the corner, but it's coming. This is the ITER site in France, how it's progressing and what's being done there, and demonstration in the mid-2030s. Looking at the inside of some of the parts of the ITER project in comparison to the size of the people. And it will require investment and interest in fusion. And there's been $1 billion in the last 5 years, but there's going to be more and more needed. So to get to fusion electricity, you've got to have a sustaining fusion source, has to survive, materials have to survive. So that's the idea. And how they're going to get there, multiple programs. An aggressive timeline, looking for 2050. Host a fusion pilot plant and demonstration facility at ORICL is one of the pushes, one of the ideas that's being promoted and pushed at this time. Public-private venture leverages the capabilities for the 2040s. But you got to build it, you got to start in the 2020s. So this is what they see for the impact to East Tennessee. Come up with those new materials, advanced manufacturing, vacuum gas separation system, design of the system, and actually build the projects and even some potential new ones. So I'll give you some thoughts into the future, and as we begin to wrap up our stories of the secret city for this last session. All right, we've got about 10 more minutes. If you want to make any comments or bring up any questions, we'll have time to deal with anything you'd like to talk about as we wrap the session up. So just unmute yourself and let's have a conversation.
Ray, I've got a question. I have a grandson who is a sophomore in high school. Are they doing is anybody from the lab or any place else doing any talks to the high school students in Oak Ridge about going into fusion energy is the way of the future and encouraging them to do it? He is definitely focused on an engineering degree when he gets to college. But I think having some real information about fusion energy and what the possibilities are, what they're moving toward, could be a huge help to not only him, but a lot of high school students.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I know in the past there have been programs such as what you're mentioning. I'm not aware that, and I'm afraid that COVID has caused that to be put on hold.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I'm just wondering if maybe, would Alan be the best place to start in asking the question, or would somebody else be?
Alan is a good place to start, but I will go directly to the laboratory and will ask Wade Criswell would be the person I'll contact, encourage them to consider that. Now, the other thing that I want to say about the pandemic is it has made Zoom really capable of being used, and schools are using it too. So there's no reason why the laboratory can't be online and make things available. One of the things they've done is they've made virtual tours of the laboratory available online, and they're really well done. You make me sad right now that I didn't show you that as a part of this conversation. And maybe what I'll do in the winter session is I'll bring Wade Criswell on as a guest, and we will actually do a demonstration of the virtual tours that you can take of the lab. So I'll mark that down as one of the things for the session in the winter series. But I would encourage you all now to just go to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory website and look for their virtual tours. And that's a
Okay.
good place to start. So, but I will pursue that idea of why are we not, or are we, in fact, I may not even know about it, that reaching into the schools, especially as the focus changes toward fusion, there's going to need to be education about, and there need to be workers who are capable of carrying that technology forward. So I think the person you talked about being interested in engineering should know that that fusion looks like it's a very lucrative field for consideration. So thank you for that suggestion.
Sure. I just hate to lose our young people, you know, to going other places when there's really big stuff going on here. Thank you.
And there is. There's a lot happening in Oak Ridge, and we continue to be the center of much of that research, especially as we move toward new energy sources. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
I have a quick question. The site where the modular reactor TVA is undertaking development of the modular reactor, that used to be the old CRBR site, right?
The Clinch River Breeder Reactor site near the on the west end of town, right on the river, just south and east of the East Tennessee Technology Park. Mm-hmm.
I can remember back to what 1970 something when you know, that whole area was, you know, being promoted for development of that site, and then, you know, Carter cut off the whole CRBR effort. So there's history to that site, which goes back more than a generation. And I just wonder who, if anybody, is capturing the history of that site.
I do have some information on the Clinch River Breeder Reactor and those decisions, and I followed that site over the years. It's been considered a number of times for other endeavors, the most recent one being that TVA small modular reactor. I'm not aware right now of exactly what the plans are or when things might be happening there. But to answer your question, that segment of history is not one that's been captured well. And one of the reasons is historians are not very proud of that. Quite frankly, it's not something we want to brag about. It's something that is that's a sad commentary on what happened to us in the 70s. Now, that's not the only time we've had programs that had good deal of promise canceled for Oak Ridge for political purposes. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Every year we have to wonder, are we going to have funding for the next year? And then every 4 years, we have to wonder which political affiliations we'll have and what their association with Oak Ridge will be. As you well know, the retirement of Senator Lamar Alexander, it has significant impact on us. When we have someone up there that's been there for years and he's no longer there, we have to train some other politicians to understand and know about Oak Ridge, or we will get what happened to us in the 70s again if we're not careful. So it's not something that we should ignore, but you have to realize it's not something we brag about either. So it doesn't get captured in our history as well as some of the other things that have been more successful.
I'm just thinking that you know, focusing some on the history of on that history and the history of that site is something that might be good for your winter semester course.
I'll do that. I'll take a look into it and we'll have some conversation about it. We'll see what we can find. Thank you for that suggestion too. Other thoughts? And I do welcome any suggestions for future conversations. I will do some research and we'll talk about them at least. I don't know how much good information I can bring you, but I'll bring you what I can find. We got about 3 more minutes before my little alarm's going to go off here and we'll have to stop. Any other thoughts that you have? Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed our sessions again, all 3 of them, and I look forward to more. But thank you. Many of you are faithful and have been with me a long while, and I appreciate you doing that. I hope that what we're able to do in bringing these series to you or these stories to you are of interest and beneficial. I do enjoy doing the research, of course, and I'm glad to be given the opportunity to do it for the winter series as well. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jackie. Sure enough. Thank you, all of you. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.